This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. White Plains Week, what's happening? Who are the newsmakers? What's in store for the future? The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey with the Dean of the White Plains School of Journalism, Jim Benerofe. Been here for 19 years on this program, weekly, reporting the news you need to know. So let's go to the White Plains Week video newsreel March of Time with the headlines.
And here are the headlines for the week of August 9th, 2019. Common Council appoints John P. Collins, Jr., City Court Judge, replacing Judge Hansberry by a 4-2 vote. Two council persons criticized the process. State Education Department is late with assessment test results for second straight year. White Plains Superintendent of Schools says getting assessment results this late does school district little good in planning curriculum adjustments. There are 3 weeks before school starts. New security procedures will be in place. The district will conduct extensive active shooter drills with the White Plains Police Department after hours this fall. El Paso and Dayton, Ohio suffered 2 shooting attacks, and ICE conducted raids on 3 corporations in Mississippi, arresting over 600 alleged illegal workers. The gun controversy starts again. Gatehouse Media, a super news company, to merge with Gannett, hopeful of creating massive media internet presence. Journal News memos say little. Gatehouse Media says less. Owners of 3 Barker Avenue withdraw request for special permit to build Department of Motor Vehicle offices. New location is unknown at this time. This week, 74 years ago, the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan, and Nagasaki, ending World War II. This week, Vladimir Putin of Russia raised threat of retaliating with nuclear weapons if attacked by U.S. with atomic weapons. Toni Morrison, renowned black author of our generation, passes away.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And now the video newsreel begins. And in the audience at the Common Council meeting Monday night was a very special team, only the second White Plains Little League team to win the state championship in the age 10-11 division. And we'll have a little more on them later on in the show. Congratulations. Anyway, right at the top. Terrific. They were so happy. Now, next slide. This is the scene of the Common Council and the mayor on Monday evening when they were discussing the approval of Judge John P. Collins, Jr. and appointing him to the new county judgeship that has been vacant due to Judge Hansberry's retirement. The votes went this way. Dennis Crolian voted no, and Mr. Martin, John Martin, yes. John Kirkpatrick, in a surprise, voted no. Milagros Lacuna abstained, and Justin Brash approved, and so did Nadine Hunt Robinson on the right, and the mayor, of course, voted yes. The vote 4-2 with one abstention, Ms. Lacuna. And what was interesting about this was it was an hour-long discussion spearheaded by Dennis Crowley's objections that the process was not transparent. And he made a lot of points, and his main point, Jim, was that the John Martin called for perhaps a confidential straw vote among the council persons to decide, as Mr. Martin put it, what the prevailing idea was as who they wanted nominated. And however, he did not make the results of this poll public. He kept them confidential, and Crowley objected to that, and Ms. Lacuna asked for a special meeting so they could all discuss it again, in executive session and come to a more reasoned decision. Mr. Martin objected to the fact that they thought there was something wrong with this, that it wasn't transparent, and he said he was just trying to get a sense, by having the poll. And Justin Brash said when he spoke that he was originally not for John Collins, and that was an interesting development. And so Mr. Martin had said that they went for Mr. Collins because he sensed that they were basically more people put Collins first than others, but it was never made clear who put him first and who did not. So the mayor said that it was an overall very comprehensive process, and they interviewed all 9, and they could have had any amount of discussions they wanted. And also, he had discussed with Mr. Crowley about it, but not with Ms. Lacuna. And Ms. Lacuna said, "Point of order," and you never responded to my email asking for a special meeting, which she said is something that if you have 2 council persons that want to call a special meeting on something, they have to do it. So generally, the vote was taken. It was 4-1, and that is over. However, it's a very lively discussion. You can see it in its entirety. I felt that picking out clips, just gives one's point of view. But the whole discussion is very interesting. And if you are interested in this, even though it's now in the past, and it's an accompli, you can see it on the Common Council rebroadcast over on the city website. And what did you think of this?
Well,
this controversy. You missed a doozy, as Red Barber would say.
I don't know. I really have no opinion. I don't know a list of the other candidates, and
no.
I think that.
But that's for their own protection, I guess.
It's
looking for their jobs.
It's interesting. I mean, usually city judge picks aren't necessarily that controversial, are they? Even?
Well, we haven't had this many people apply before. 38 applied, and they decided on interviewing 9, and Mr. Collins seems pretty well qualified. He spent 15 years with the Southern District U.S. Court, state of New York. He prosecuted fraud, money laundering, racketeering stuff. Investigated and prosecuted. So, the city court will not have as exciting and glamorous prosecutions or judgments, but you never know. But anyway, he is in for 10 years, and that situation is cleared up. But it was nice that so many people wanted the job. Now let's take a look at this building. They're burning the night oil up in the state education department in Albany, shown here, because they're trying to get the assessment test scoring from last April and May completed. And I called the school district of White Plains, trying to find out when they could expect these. They were late last year. They didn't arrive until September. And the school district reported that they are going to be late again this year. They said they expected it in late August, perhaps. And I asked Dr. Joseph Ricca how this affects their ability to use the assessment tests in planning the new year. And he gave us this quote. He said that each year we struggle to utilize the data associated with the New York State assessment in a meaningful way, as the information is rarely available prior to the end of August. It makes it virtually impossible to utilize when considering initial scheduling and support systems for our children for the new year, about to start in 4 weeks. While the data is used for diagnostic and student support purposes once received, it is truly an annual challenge to use it in a proactive manner. That is a really strong statement. And quite frankly, if you can't get the assessments out for the next year's planning, do we really, are they significant at all anymore? Is this, and I mean, and we hired this company from Minnesota to do these new tests, and they can't get them done on time. This is the second year they're late. First year, okay, we cut them a little slack. First time out of the chute, but now it's time to get their act together, unless, of course, and this is my secret theory, absolutely no basis for this, Jim. Perhaps the scores were so low that they're trying to set a curve that'll make them look better. I don't think they wouldn't do that, would they? No, of course not. Parents don't thought.
No.
Yes. Now, they're now moving to another very sober story. Violence has burst out across the nation in El Paso, upper left-hand corner there, and in Dayton, an shooting attack on a bar, and just earlier this week, ICE arresting workers by surprise in Mississippi and scheduling them for exportation. And you know, they don't even haven't made arrangements to take care of the children whose parents won't be home to receive them after school. Come on, could we plan a little better than that? Could we? I mean, that's just putting children at risk. It's wrecking families. America didn't used to do that. We tried to help people. Now we hurt them severely. And but this brings up the matter of security. And Dr. Ricca explained to me that the school district is really putting in intriguing new security measures, which will be stronger for all the school buildings. They will also have better surveillance and all sorts of policies, which of course people will be learning about as the school year on a need-to-know basis. In other words, I do not like to divulge actual security innovations, because then then everybody knows about them. And but the one thing they will be doing, which is really significant, is that the school district is going to conduct after-hours drills in the schools with the White Plains Police Department to simulate active shooter procedures, which is another indication of how closely the district aligns with the police department on matters of security. What was your reaction to the violence? and thoughts
Well,
about it.
I think it comes into the issue, I believe, of gun control. I think that there is a very simple things that we can do legally. First of all, anybody, and I don't care if it's the first gun, the second gun, the third gun, or the fourth gun that they're buying,
Yeah.
they should have to go through a background check each time they get a gun.
Each time.
There should be a waiting period, and why do they want the gun, etc.
Perhaps a psychological test,
And
too.
I think that we've got to ban military weapons. Now, there's nothing hard about this, and there's no reason not to ban military weapons. I mean, this whole gun thing becomes nonsense, and believe me, they're using automatic weapons to knock off these people. I don't think there's been anything where they didn't use some kind of automatic repeater weapon, and I don't know
Those have
that
been
much
the most
detail about
devastating.
specific guns, but there is no reason for anybody to have to own an AK-47. That is just total baloney.
I would have to agree. I mean, particularly for hunting, you can't eat something that you use an AK-47 on. But so I mean, that doesn't. The only reason to have one is to be able to kill if you want to.
Basically, yeah, I think that's
basically.
correct.
And now, speaking of more things that people should pay attention to, 74 years ago this week, the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and this is what it looked like. This is a photo shot at one of the sites, I believe it's Hiroshima, after the bomb was dropped. 160,000 persons were killed in Hiroshima and approximately 80,000 in Nagasaki. And the reason this is important to remember, and I do show this every year, is that Vladimir Putin of Russia, in a little fit of pique on Monday, said he would retaliate with his own nuclear weapons if the U.S. attacks it with atomic weapons. And to my way of thinking, Mr. Putin has to be the sane person in the room here, because, as we all know, the president has a tendency to do knee-jerk reactions to things when provoked, and I hope this doesn't cause a problem. Mr. Putin, be the big man here.
Well, I think that Trump, his ability for diplomacy and foreign policy is like nil. He doesn't have the vaguest idea of what he's doing. North Korea is testing missiles left and right, and he's not worried about it.
Because he's a good guy.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think he's in a world all his own when it comes to foreign policy, and he does not understand what's going on, and he doesn't read books either.
That's true. Or memos. Or listen. He needs to listen. One thing I've learned over the years is you have to listen. Except if you're doing a news commentary show and then you just say what you want, right? Like we do. But on the other hand, nobody's listening. If they would listen, we wouldn't be in this bad shape today. Right. But now, speaking of listening, it was big news in the media front today. Let's go to the story on the Journal News merger with Gatehouse Media. And there's the two logos merging together, and it is a merge. Gatehouse Media would now, with the acquisition of the Journal News, would operate 260 daily newspapers in the U.S., and along with 300 weeklies. It would have the largest U.S. news company by far, and with a print circulation of 8.7 million, or about 7 million more than the new number 2, McClatchy, according to a media expert. So that's a lot of newspapers.
Yeah.
The question is, how do these newspapers show local stories? This has been the journal news problem for the last 10 years. They keep less and less
Yeah, well, they
local
made
coverage.
the biggest mistake that the Journal News made was when they stopped publishing the dailies that they had in certain communities. Like they stopped publishing New Rochelle, they stopped publishing Yonkers, and they stopped publishing White Plains, and they combined all those things, and that really didn't work. They fooled around a little bit with trying weeklies, but I really think they had no idea what they were doing. And I think that I know a fairly significant amount about running weekly newspapers and the amounts of money that it takes and the kind of staff that it takes and what kind of news you need to cover. They weren't doing that. They weren't covering really local news. They weren't covering what people were interested in. And right now, the things that the public are interested in reading in a newspaper as opposed to online is really local news.
Right. More than ever. And
Local-
there's more than
local-
ever, there's less of it.
Local weeklies
Yeah.
seem to be flourishing pretty well. They're the only print newspapers that are really doing significantly well. But look, I'm not running the.
Well, they have, Gatehouse Media has 300 weeklies.
Yeah. Well, I am not familiar at all with Gatehouse Media. I am familiar with McClatchy.
Yes.
But Gatehouse Media is a new name to
Well,
me.
they have terrific internet presence for all their various properties. Here's a shot of some of them. There is the St. Augustine paper in the upper left. There is the Statesman down in Austin. And Gannett, of course, has the Detroit Free Press, and Lohud, of course. Now, the intriguing thing about these 4 websites look very much alike. 2 run by Lohud and 2 run by them, and the idea is they are going to make an effort to really enhance as they picked up, the newspaper consolidation has picked up as local papers find it hard to grow digital businesses and replace declines in print ads and circulation. And so they're looking to consolidate. And so what does this mean for the future? The Journal News memo to its employees, then I explain, and you'll find all about it after the merger goes through at the end of the year. And the idea here is they want to find a way to maximize these websites. I'll tell you what's wrong with the websites. You can't find anything on them. They're not well organized.
Well, I think that there's a really big misconception about the love of digital media and digital life altogether. I think, to talk about one of my favorite subjects is banks saying, go green, go to paperless. You're not going to paperless, and it ought to be pointed out, and they ought not even be allowed to advertise that. I have to print out my bank statements, and the time that's consumed in printing out the stuff. Chase offered $5 to go paperless.
Oh, thank you, Chase.
If they offered me $5,000, I'd consider it.
Maybe.
If you have one account and you can go paperless, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you have multiple bank accounts, forget it.
No, banks cannot market. They have no concept of marketing. They really don't. And now, local item of note that took place on the Common Council, remember the protest at 1 and 3 Barker Avenue in White Plains back in June? George Latimer attended it. A number of county legislators attended it. And on Monday night, it was announced on the consent agenda that the company that was going to was up for a special permit to renovate the 3 Barker to accommodate the Department of Motor Vehicles, which is currently in the White Plains Mall. They withdrew that request. So apparently some behind-the-scenes stuff was done. They said that would not be a good idea. Where the DMV is going to go, nobody knows. That's really going to kill the lunch business if they move out of White Plains. Perhaps they could go to New Rochelle. That's after that big controversy over where to locate the court down there. Now, let's talk a little bit about Hal Prince. Hal Prince died last week. We didn't get a chance to talk about him during the show, but Mr. Prince, those are just some of the musicals that he was associated with and produced, and he collaborated with Andrew Lloyd Webber, who collaborated with Mr. Prince on Evita and Phantom of the Opera, said that he was not just the Prince of musicals, the crowned head. He is who directed 2 of his greatest productions of my career, Evita and Phantom. This wonderful man taught me so much, and his mastery of musical theater was without equal. And he also invented things that musicals hadn't done before. With Company, it was the first of a long line of directorial collaborations with Stephen Sondheim. And though not a big financial hit, Company, according to Variety, changed the face of the musical theater, bringing psychological drama and social relevance to the form. And it won a Tony, too. Hal Prince, and they dimmed the lights for him on Broadway at his passing. Toni Morrison, renowned black author of our generation, passed away this week, and those are just some of the great novels she had wrote, creating distinct, meaningful, iconic black characters. And she also was given the Medal of Honor by Barack Obama. And finally, here is a shot of the Little League being honored at the council on Monday evening. And they're sort of milling, getting congratulated by the Common Council. They're sitting in the audience, and the mayor is giving a proclamation to the coach. The White Plains Little League champions of New York State for the 10 and 11 division. John Bailey, Jim Benerofe, good night, and congratulations from White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.